Now, the messy middle is a space you find yourself in that's between where you were and where you want to go. It's a place that can be difficult and awkward and scary, but it's necessary to step into in order to make real change, especially when, for all intents and purposes, you have the ability and power to simply stay the same.
Welcome to The Change Effect, the podcast that helps you turn life transitions into powerful new beginnings. One story, one shift, one breakthrough at a time. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, leadership coach, and change strategist who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders break through barriers to create success on their own terms. I now work with women to step into change to create a life they love. Whether you're putting yourself at the center of your own story, redefining success, or making a power pivot in your life, career, or business, you're in the right place. Each week, we dive into conversations with trailblazers, change makers, and everyday women experiencing the ripple effects that come from overcoming the fear and doing it anyway, providing actionable steps, practical strategies, and a whole lot of fun along the way. So if you're ready to step up and become unstoppable, buckle up and let's get started.
There's a particular kind of change that doesn't get much airtime. When life is working, work is working, and still something in you begins to shift. Today we're talking about choosing change when things are going well, how to move through the messy middle, and how to navigate the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Now, some changes begin with pressure, and others begin with a sense of completion. You've built something meaningful. You've grown into a version of yourself that once felt aspirational. And now that version feels familiar, maybe even finished. The pull towards change doesn't arrive with urgency. It arrives with a quiet awareness that your inner orientation has moved. Now, this kind of change is different to justify because there's nothing obvious to point to. There's no clear problem to solve, only a shift in alignment. Now, this is typically a time when we knowingly or unknowingly end up stepping into the messy middle. Now, the messy middle is a space you find yourself in that's between where you were and where you want to go. It's a place that can be difficult and awkward and scary, but it's necessary to step into in order to make real change, especially when, for all intents and purposes, you have the ability and power to simply stay the same. So let's talk a bit more about this space and all of its messiness and how you know you're in it. A key note to make is that the messy middle tends to arrive before language does. It often shows up as maybe pausing a bit longer before you make decisions, feeling less fluent in conversations that once felt easy, wanting more space without knowing how you'll actually use it, or experiencing relief and grief in the same breath. Externally, very little has changed, but internally, the ground is obviously reorganizing. Now, this is a space where an old identity starts to loosen and a new one hasn't fully formed yet. That's why it feels so uncomfortable. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the messy middle rarely announces itself. So it tends to show up in ordinary moments. You may be in a meeting, a social setting, or a familiar conversation, and you notice you're quieter than usual. Not because you have nothing to say, but because the way you used to participate no longer feels comfortable. You may delay decisions you would have once made more quickly, not out of indecisiveness, but because your internal criteria has changed and your brain hasn't quite caught up yet. Or you may feel oddly tired about interactions that once energized you, or restless during days that used to feel productive. There's a subtle sense of friction, not enough to stop you, but enough to make everything feel slightly off. Now, psychologically, what's happening here is a loss of internal shorthand. Your mind used to know how to respond automatically, telling you, this matters, this doesn't, this is worth my energy. But in the messy middle, those signals are being rewritten. So how do we deal with this? First, instead of forcing clarity, start tracking patterns. Ask yourself things like, when do I feel more like myself? When do I feel like I'm performing a version of myself? And which environments drain me faster than they used to? It's time to ask yourself these questions to get a better radar on where you are now, so you can better navigate patterns you're letting go of and steps you're taking towards the new way of feeling, doing, or being. So how does this shedding of old patterns affect your identity? This is a key question. And an important thing to know is when identity begins to shift, what you lose first are your reference points. You see, identity loss during change rarely feels like panic. It feels more like disorientation. You might start noticing a drop in confidence in rooms where you used to feel grounded, or a tendency to over-explain yourself, or even a sudden urge to reassert competence, even when no one is questioning it. This happens because identity provides more than meaning. It provides us with an orientation. It tells your nervous system, I know where I stand, I know how to show up, and I know what's expected here. And when identity loosens, your nervous system looks for substitutes. That's why people in this phase often cling to old titles longer than they want to, overwork to recreate a sense of certainty, or prematurely define what's next just to feel anchored. This is because they begin to feel a loss of predictability. So how do you best navigate this rather than fight it? First is separate self-worth from familiarity. Notice when discomfort is coming from newness rather than misalignment. It will always take time to embrace something new. Whether it's a change in role, relationship, or lifestyle, you need to give yourself time to adjust. The next is create temporary anchors. Keep those routines, practices, or roles that are still serving you that will provide stability, even if they're not permanent. This will help you feel steady in the storm and more confident about the change you're making. And then lastly, limit narrative pressure. Always remember, whatever it is, you don't owe anyone a coherent explanation while you're recalibrating. This is a personal transformation happening, and it's yours to own. With this said, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. When all else fails, routines, reflection, and gentle structure will continue to provide stability while greater clarity develops for you. Keep it as simple as possible. You don't necessarily need new language or a new label to become a different version of yourself. Oftentimes, our internal shifts are subtle, so don't overcomplicate. And always remember to give yourself enough room to stay open, confident, and present while something new takes shape. If any of this resonated, please feel free to share the podcast link with others to help them step into something new with greater clarity, ease, and confidence. I will also be sharing a quick exercise in the show notes called Navigating the In-Between to help you reflect on where you are and where you want to go. That's it for now. Until next time. Thank you for listening to The Change Effect. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoyed this episode, so more women like you can find us and take their next step toward creating a life they love.